Hello, friends. I'm no therapist, but I'm your host, Stephanie Goodman. I'm a wife, a mother, a grandmother, and a woman of faith. Often friends ask me how I have a successful marriage while blending families and staying optimistic in life. This podcast features people with real life stories about success in relationships and triumph over trial. Have you been a victim of childhood trauma? My guest, Heather Jones, is a transformational coach, podcast host, and author of the book Becoming God's Daughter. Today, she's sharing with us her personal journey of healing from negative generational patterns. Hello, and welcome to a new edition of I'm No Therapist, but today I want to talk about healing the inner child. I have a dear friend in my studio today that we have been able to have the opportunity to have some deep conversations. She's an author, a mother, a speaker, a podcaster, and I'm sure there's many more that I'm not mentioning right now. Heather, thank you for being here.
I'm so excited to be here. So honored. I feel like a little giggly child. I'm so excited to be here.
We're going to have some fun today.
We're going to have fun. Lots of fun.
So Heather, do you remember how you and I met?
So I know how I think we first met. Was it during Amber's Zoom or was it through your daughter?
It was through my daughter.
Okay. Yes. Officially, I think we just had our first conversation after that, right? Where we connected deeper. But yes, it was through your daughter. Well, I met your daughter first.
Yes, that's right.
So we worked together. It was really fun.
And it was interesting that she even chose to introduce me to you through her, saying, oh, this is someone you would love.
Oh, yes.
And so I think that she introduced me to you through your Facebook.
Gotcha.
I started paying attention and looking through your Facebook and I fell in love with you immediately. And then we were able to interact a little bit softly here and there.
Yeah.
And I found out that you had a book.
Yes.
And I knew that I wanted to get that book, especially because the title of it is Becoming God's Daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And I am very passionate about that, if we recognize who we are and whose we are, then we can show up in the world in the way that we're meant to be.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I wrote Becoming God's Daughter, A Journey to Discovering Your Divine Worth, because I needed someone who I could look up to, who had experiences similar to mine that would say it's okay to have gone through really traumatic experiences and still be of worth and value. Mm. So that's why I wrote the book, because I grew up very Christian. So, everything's very black and white. We don't make bad choices. If we do, we kind of don't talk about it. So I was considered kind of like the prodigal daughter. And I had to learn by touching the fire that the fire was hot. Okay. So my parents told me all the time, don't touch that or don't do that. But I was very willful and I was like, no, I'm going to touch that. So I learned the hard way that the fire is hot. But through that, I was able to discover who I was and my own individual worth, even though I had to experience it in such a hard way. So that's kind of what my book is all about, is teaching women and men that you can go through really hard things, but use it to empower you and use it to not feel shame or guilt, but use it as a way to say, hey, I overcome that and look at me now. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I love the quote from Wonder Woman. She says, sometimes you don't know what you've learned until you come out the other side.
Absolutely.
How powerful is that?
It's very powerful.
We don't have to have happily ever after lives, but it's what we do with it and our experiences that really create our world.
Right.
So you talk about inner child healing. Is this a passion for you?
It is. So when I started having these breakthroughs, so for the longest time, I was the kind of person who, I was a prodigal daughter. I've had all these sins, and I was kind of carrying those on my shoulder, and I didn't know that you can remove those things and they can become blessings instead of curses. So I really got into several different modalities and learned that a lot of these things that or the choices I was making was because of that inner childhood, that childhood belief system. So a lot of people between the ages of, from when you're born to 7 to 15, that belief system is instilled. And so if people can learn how to go back in time and kind of heal that inner child wounds, you can make better decisions for yourself.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of powerful experiences that awoken me and made me realize I have worth and I have value, not, and those things that had happened to me weren't something I had to carry around in shame or like victimhood. Like, I don't know about you, but don't you feel like all the world is full of like victims?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
absolutely.
I am this way because of so and so. We get stuck in it. Yeah. But then you see people who use their stories to like overcome and be triumphant, and like Wonder Woman, right?
Yes.
So she's this powerful woman.
Uh-huh.
And if we all hear her story, it didn't start out that way.
Right.
But
right. And I love the analogy that, we don't look to Wonder Woman because she overcame a paper cut. Mm-hmm. Okay? Mm-hmm. We look to Wonder Woman because she looked at death in the eye and said, I'm not going to let this overpower me.
Right.
I'm going to do everything in my power, and I'm going to envelop my superpower friends, and we're going to make this wrong a right.
Right. Well, I feel like people, when we experience trauma, sometimes that is like looking death in the face, right? Sometimes we don't want to, sometimes as a protection, we block those things out, or we don't talk about them, and we kind of put them in a cupboard. Mm-hmm. And for some people, it would be like facing death to open that cupboard and relive that trauma. So my book briefly talks about how these belief systems were created and how I was able to overcome them. I mean, every time you overcome something or learn something, you learn more, right? We're always on a constant journey. So I do have at the end of my book how I talk about a way where you can kind of heal trauma and those inner child wounds. Mm-hmm. I do want to write another book that focuses more on the healing modality, but there is a way, and people are doing it every day, and it's people like you and me who are showing up and sharing their experiences and sharing the bad stuff too. And I think that's what's so important and what's so needed is people don't talk about those things so openly, right? We don't post it on Facebook or Instagram or social media. We just kind of post the good stuff. So
this is true.
We're always comparing ourselves to these perfect lives, right?
Yeah. Yeah, this is true. And comparison kills confidence.
Right. It's a killer of joy.
It definitely is. And yet we live in a world where we are compared to constantly. Mm-hmm. We're compared to the way that we write. We're compared to the quotes that we share. We're compared to our political thoughts or Christian thoughts, however it is. And you have a good point that we don't put our real life out there. However, I don't want to see someone's dirty laundry.
Right.
On Facebook. Mm-hmm. It's a tough place.
That's a tough place because I know what you mean. I think I want to see people's dirty laundry if they're saying, hey, this is what my dirty laundry looks like. This is how I was able to fold it and put it away.
Yes.
But if you're in that victim mentality where it's like, this is my dirty laundry and this is why my life's showing up the way it is, like there's a different energy around that.
I agree.
Does that make sense? And so I love my dad so much. So he had a really hard childhood. So growing up, he had a very abusive, alcoholic father. They were very poor. So him and his brothers had to go collect cans to get a loaf of bread.
Oh, wow.
He had to sell flowers to make money for his dad's alcohol. Just lots of trauma. At a very young age, he was thrown into foster care. So he really had all of the stories to say, my life is this way because of my childhood, right? So he could have chose to become an alcoholic. He could have chose to be abusive. He could have chose to be all these things.
Yes.
But instead he said he broke the cycle and was like, no, I'm not going to be that way. But I feel like a lot of people use their story to enable themselves. And that's one thing I want people to know is you don't have to be enabled because something happened to you or you did something. Mm-hmm. And you have the power to kind of transform your life and be better because of.
Yeah.
So
right.
I'm very passionate about that.
So you talked a little bit about how you had certain limiting beliefs
Yes.
that formed in your life. Can you go into that a little bit? When did you recognize? Because I think that's so powerful to recognize different experiences that we've had in our life. Wow, this created this limiting belief, and this created this limiting belief.
Right.
I actually wrote down some of the limiting beliefs that you mentioned in your book, which, by the way, can I just say, I really appreciate the simplicity of the book. There's so much power in the book. It really has changed my life and the way that I look at things. And reading through your book, I found myself reminiscing on my own things. I mean, you start all the way from your experiences of kindergarten.
Yeah.
Right? And from that experience, suddenly a moment clicked in your brain. You said, oh, I'm unlovable. No one will save me.
Right. So, yeah, so at a very young age, we start creating these belief systems about ourselves. And then over time, our beliefs want evidence. So they want proof that that is true. So I'll share one story that was really pivotal in my in understanding that I had these belief systems.
Yeah.
So when I was in junior high, we all love junior high.
Right.
I was outside
Let's go back.
I know,
Let's go
right?
back.
Let's all go back to junior high. So cringe.
Whatever.
We were all about like the blue and white heavy eyeliner, and it was fun times. So there was one recess where I was outside. I was kind of a loner. And I could tell this girl was like giving me the stink eye. And I was like, what the heck? So I was just kind of watching her walk back and forth. Well, she finally got the courage to like come up to me, and she like looked me up and down, and she was like, Heather, why do you wear the same skirt to school every day? And in that moment, I remember just looking, like really evaluating myself. And I was like, wow, like I have no worth. I have no value because I can't afford nice clothes, because I don't get to go shopping every 3 weeks for nice clothes, because I don't have nice hair, because I don't have nice shoes. And then my belief system concreted that belief in, like, this is evidence that you have no worth and that you have no value. So from that moment on, I had to show up as this perfect person. So my hair had to be perfect. My makeup had to be perfect. My nails, my clothes. Because if they weren't, then I had no value. And there's been so many times in my life where I wouldn't show up for things because I didn't have time to spend the hour and a half to get perfect. And then when I was with people, I was constantly thinking, oh my gosh, like they're staring at my face, or they're staring at my skin, or my hair is not perfect, or it was horrible. But it wasn't until I went to an event where we were told to kind of write a limiting belief on a board. And so I wrote I know self-worth on this board. And then we were going to go through the process of breaking the board, which would represent breaking through this, you were
belief. Actually physically breaking the board?
Yeah, we're physically breaking the board. So you guys, I hit that board like 30 times and it did not break. So then evidence showed up again and was like, you have no self-worth. Like, stop trying to overcome it.
That's right.
But luckily enough, I was able to go on stage and we were able to have this beautiful process where he took me to the past. And he asked me, like, what age did this belief system start? And that's when I had a realization that it was in junior high.
Okay,
in this
can
moment.
I pause you on that?
Yes.
So this is interesting to me. I believe that because you recognize where your limiting belief started, then you could address it.
Yes.
Where do you go if you cannot find where this limiting belief came from?
Right. So I think when we have to become aware, right? So we're aware that there is something that's holding us back, and that will be a limiting belief, whether it's I'm not good looking, or I'm too heavy, or I can't be happy unless I lose weight, or whatever that is. I think just taking the time to really talk with yourself and ask your spirit, like, where is this coming from? And for me, and for a lot of people that were in that room, like, a memory will pop up. Usually, if you give yourself time to ask the question, it will show you.
Oh my.
Like this. And so once you start doing those big ones, though, you got to go a little bit deeper and deeper. There's different modalities you can use to get to those really deep ones. But in the beginning, when you're starting out, it's just really taking the time with yourself and deep meditation and prayer and ask the question.
Yeah.
Like journaling is powerful too. So for us, it was just writing down that belief, because I think writing it and seeing it is so powerful. But then really doing the work to get to the bottom of it. Because remember I said as a child, in kindergarten, that's when that belief started as kind of like a seed.
And you remember the story that
And I
happened?
remember, yeah. So it was just in kindergarten, and this girl was wearing this beautiful dress, and the boys were like brushing and playing with their hair, and they're like, "Oh, Sarah, you're so beautiful." And I'm sitting over here like, ew, I must be so ugly because I'm not getting this attention,
Right.
you know? So that is where like a little belief started. And then, I had other things happen. Like my mom left when we were really little, and I became like the mother at 7 years old to my little sister.
Oh my goodness.
And we had a really hard dad he was, single now, doing everything on his own. We were tossed around between babysitters. Some were abusive. So, I had a really hard life. And in that life, these belief systems just were created. And then over time, evidence proved my beliefs, right? So once I was able to figure out what that was, then I could go back and heal that. And I'm not perfect. Like I'm still learning. There's little beliefs here and there.
Yeah.
But now I have the tools that I can now no longer let that affect me in a negative way. So
you've been able to see and recognize where those limiting beliefs happened. Now, are you rewriting your story? How are you healing those inner child wounds?
Right. So it started the moment when I had that breakthrough on stage. Then I realized, oh my gosh, we don't have to think or act like this anymore. Like you have the power to literally transform your life. Like the second you realize you're not happy with something, you can transform it.
Okay.
And I was able to do that through, first I do Reiki, so energy work, learning energy healing, then the emotion code. Have you heard of emotion code?
Slightly.
Yeah, emotion code. So a lot of my things were holistic. So therapy didn't help me, doctors didn't help me. It was all really learning to go within and seeking those answers. But
did you have someone that took you on that journey? Maybe a mentor in your life?
I love that you say that, because my motto is, when the student is ready, the teacher will show up. Right? So as soon as you're ready to transform, your perfect mentor will show up. Whether it's on Facebook and you really resonated with someone, a lot of times it's finding the person that has that story, right? So if you've had, for example, sexual trauma, Elizabeth Smart is a great example of someone who went through the worst type of trauma and was able to overcome that. So if I was that person, I would really follow her and see what she did to overcome that, right? Because what do they say? Success always leaves clues, right?
Yeah.
So,
yes.
So for me, when I was ready, so I went to this event and I had that breakthrough. Okay. While I was there, I was introduced to, at the time she was called an angel. And I had learned that she did Reiki. So, and it wasn't an instant thing. It just happened, because I do believe in divine timing of things too. So just my healing naturally progressed and happened when I was ready to heal.
You were open to it.
When I was open to it.
Yeah, I think that's a big point, that it's okay for us to have our chapters and not expect that we will be there and ready to learn and ready to heal.
Absolutely. Well, and think about, I'll be 38 next month. 2 months. Next month. Is it July yet? Almost. So if it took you how many years? I was 33 when I started having these breakthroughs and realizing and awakening to my truth and power. So it's like all those years of trauma or limiting beliefs, it's not going to heal overnight, right? It is going to take time. So really allowing yourself that grace, that I am imperfect, but I'm learning and growing.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Do you feel that maybe triggers are some of those tools that help us to awaken to what is wounded?
Absolutely. So triggers are your body's response to saying, hey, there needs to be some healing here. I've come so far in my healing journey that now I'm able to take a step back and realize, why am I triggered? And a lot of times people have said, if you're triggered by someone, it's because they are mirroring something you don't like about yourself.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So I'm like, ooh, so if someone's bothering me, I'm like, okay, Heather, what do you have to work on with yourself?
Yeah.
So there's just so many things. I mean, I could talk to you for hours and hours about all the modalities and how they can help you and transform your life. But really simply put, it's just taking the time, which people I don't think do, to really get in a state of meditation and prayer and listening to your body. There's going to be lots of tears. I know healing, it's like, and it's good to cry. That was hard for me. As a child, I shut that off. So crying was for me, what's the word I want to say? I wasn't strong. So if you cry, you're a baby, or if you cry, you're whatever. So for me, like learning even just how to cry, like when I'm feeling it, just letting it flow, was a healing, was something I needed to process and learn how to do. But I mean, there's so many things. It just depends on what you're struggling with. And again, though, it's just going into that quiet place and allowing yourself to be with grace.
When you recognize that you're in a place, you're seeing those triggers, you're seeing that someone is reflecting something on yourself that you need to heal, what are the steps that you take?
So for me, it's always, well, you're aware that there's something triggering you. I'll go and I'll meditate, and it doesn't even have to be like I could be triggered right now and I could just be like, oh, that's interesting. Like, I wonder why. And a lot of times you will know. So your inner child, your inner voice will tell you. It might take time to be able to hear and listen to how your spirit communicates to you. Because I love this saying, we are literally spiritual beings that are thousands and thousands of years old, and we're coming to earth in this meat package, right? So this is just a meat package that's holding our spirit, which is eternal, infinite, that has all the wisdom, all the knowledge. Our spirit knows why we're here, why we came here, what our purpose is. So if you really want to unlock all the answers, you have to learn to communicate with your spirit. And for some people, that's visual. For some people, they see words come in. It's like a movie. It depends on the individual person. For me, when I meditate and I seek those answers, it's as if in my mind's eye, I can see what the answer is. But I've talked with other people, when they go into meditation, they see like words, like writing, almost like Star Wars, where the words are coming down, and you're just reading it. So it just depends. You might hear the still small voice, like actual audio hearing.
Yeah.
So I think it's important that people take the time to ask spirit, like, how do we communicate?
That's
like,
so
what's the best way to
powerful.
communicate? Yeah.
I'm drawn to powerful questions right now. I'm learning how to allow myself to ask powerful questions, because I feel like in doing so, I can align myself to answering those powerful questions.
Yes.
And so that's something that I admire in the people that are being brought into my life right now, is learning how to ask questions. And part of my being an interviewer is that I gather stories. And I love that I am learning to ask more powerful questions. Speaking of questions, I want you to take me on a journey. Okay, so you've been in this process of experiencing life, and you're going down some real hard roads, right? Could you take us down some of those hard roads that were life-changing for you?
Absolutely. Before I tell some stories, though, I want to talk about how you said asking questions, because that is so key. Because sometimes if you're just asked the right question, it unlocks so much truth and knowledge. And some of the questions that, if you're listening, I want you to write down, because it's so important. Who was I before I came here? What are my specific gifts? Like my priesthood gifts, or my priesthood keys, whatever those are for you, for women. And you can ask about your spiritual family. I mean, there's so many things. Robin Peterson was my mentor for that, but she gave us these questions to really take into meditation. But I think the biggest one is, who am I and why am I here? What's my
Ooh.
purpose?
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of people are struggling because they don't know who they are.
Agreed.
They don't know that they are truly children of God, a heavenly mother and a heavenly mother. And when you don't have a purpose and you don't know who you are, you're a wanderer,
A
right?
Heavenly Father and a Heavenly Mother.
Mm-hmm.
So heavenly parents.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't have purpose.
And you don't have purpose, you're often lost. And a lot of times people are seeking outside things to tell them inside who they are. And that was a big part of my story. So because I had such low self-esteem, I would seek validation from men to tell me I was beautiful, to tell me that I was worthy. Mm-hmm. So I got myself into situations. So when I was 19, so I was like the perfect Molly Mormon Christian all the way through high school, right? Then college came, my skin cleared up. I had really bad acne. So I had this confidence now, right? People are telling me, oh, Heather, you're cute, you're pretty, like the football players. I'm like, oh, I have worth, I have value, I'm pretty. Yeah. So I was getting this validation.
We all fall into that
right?
Trap easily.
Which again is outside in. And that's a really good way to look at your life and saying, how am I filling my cup? Is it from the outside in or the inside out? So fast forward, I'm 19, I'm in San Diego living the life. But again, I had no self-worth, no self-esteem. And I got myself in this really bad cycle where I would go into Mexico, because you can drink at 19, and I would get absolutely wasted. And here's another thing. I would drive into Mexico by myself. I would park in a deep, dark alley, so nobody would tow my car. And then I would walk to the club in like the skimpiest, most revealing outfit by myself. And then I'd get wasted and then walk back to my car.
Oh.
So the fact that we're having this interview right now is a miracle, because I put myself in so many situations where I should not be alive. Yeah. But again, I was seeking, I was going to these clubs for some guy to show attraction to me, to want to be with me.
To give you attention.
To give me attention.
Outside compliments, right?
Yes.
Compliments can be very addicting.
They can, but they're not sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
So I found myself in this really dark cycle of the more you seek, the more you need. And so I would drink and I would party, and then I would try to find some guy out of desperation that would want to be with me intimately or touch me inappropriately, because that gave me my worth. So you can just imagine over time how big this gaping hole of no self-worth was. Because the more you give yourself away like that, the darker it is. So I was this big gaping, it's gonna make me cry. I was so broken. And it's not that I hadn't been taught from my parents that you have a loving Heavenly Father and a loving Heavenly Mother. Like, it's not that I wasn't taught these things, but I didn't know it for myself. Because again, all that trauma, I had to learn as a child what gave me value. And what I saw from my mom was she got value from her looks and her beauty. So I took that on. So luckily, though, I did get pregnant. So at 19, I got pregnant. And that she saved my life. And we had this beautiful adoption. I placed her for adoption. And I thought then too, like, okay, God, like that was the hardest thing I ever had to do, was place a child for adoption.
I've learned my lesson.
I learned my lesson. It's done, right? I didn't learn any lessons, because all I did was transfer my big gaping hole to her. Like, so she became my world and my everything. And I did get really close to like Heavenly Father, because I was praying constantly, like, help me find the right parents and like all these things. But when she was gone, that hole hadn't been healed. So within 6 months, I had gone right back into my lifestyle of drinking and seeking men for attention. And it was shocking to me, because I had this beautiful spiritual experience where I had felt like I had, done this huge miraculous thing, and I was so Christ-like and selfless, which it was, but again, I didn't heal the problem. So, luckily, well, not luckily, it was another 3 years where I had gone through a lot of stuff till I was like, okay, I'm getting kind of tired of this lifestyle, and I wanted more. But again, I hadn't healed until 33, and I had that experience where I realized I can change my life, and this can be a beautiful thing.
Wow.
So now, and that's what my book is. It's very dark, deep stories of things that had happened, that I had done, that for someone who grows up very stout Christian, it's looked upon as the most heinous crimes you can commit, which they were. But my message is that those can be the most powerful messages you share to people who are struggling, because it doesn't matter what you do to your meat package, right? To your body, because your spirit is perfect and pure. And it doesn't matter who touches you, who hurts you, who tries to take from you. Your spirit is perfect. It's eternal. So that is really what my message is for anyone who's struggling or who is just feeling all these feels because of something that's happened to them or something they've done. You don't have to allow it to affect your life anymore. In fact, you can say, like, today, I'm done and I'm going to move forward. And it's a hard process. It was really hard. In fact, writing the book, I realized there were a lot of triggers that came up, a lot of healing that still had to happen. But now I'm sitting here today and I have the most confidence, whether I have a full face of makeup or not. I don't get my self-worth from any compliments, like it's bonus. So anything outside is bonus. I love the scripture that God was sitting at the well and he said, when you drink from that well, you will always be thirsty. But when you drink from my well, you will never thirst. And that is from going from within, getting your value from within, knowing who you are, knowing your purpose, knowing your value and your worth. You become unstoppable. Like, truly. You can show up. So Walmart people are my people. I hate doing my hair and makeup. So I love just having no makeup on, going with those people. I love salt of the earth people. But that wasn't 5 years ago, right? I felt like I had to be this shell of a person to have worth and value, but not anymore.
Wow, that's so powerful. I love that. Congratulations on finding your inner strength and being able to share that message with others. I love that you have created a book. Mm-hmm. I think this is fantastic. What was the journey of creating this book? How did it become a message that you felt so strongly about that now it's time to write it? And what were some of the adversities that you experienced in writing this book?
So once I had all these amazing breakthroughs and I was healing myself and it was so empowering in my industry, because I did celebrity hair and makeup, I realized that there were so many women like me who were struggling. Beautiful women who you think you shouldn't be struggling, like you're absolutely beautiful, but they had all these dark secrets and low self-esteem. So I think when someone heals themselves, they want to share it to the world, right? Like, I was able to heal myself and have all this confidence, and now I want you to have it too. So I knew I wanted to write a book. And it wasn't until I invested in this mentor, and again, it's that question that you ask, and I asked, like, what's the next step for me in my healing process? And it was clear as day. You need to write your book. You need to write your story. And I was like, okay. So I actually wrote it probably within a couple of weeks. That was the easy part, was writing it. The hard part was just dealing with those things that I hadn't healed from. Rewriting those stories brought up a lot of emotion that I thought I had healed.
Yeah.
But I have learned you can be triggered or still have emotion to something. It's not necessarily that you haven't healed. It might just be that when you're looking at that place. So like when I look at myself when I was 12 years old, I do get emotional because I feel those emotions for her. Like, it breaks my heart that a 12-year-old would feel that way about themselves. And that was something I had to learn. But yeah, so I wrote my book. And again, when you're ready to do something, the teachers will show up that will help you. So I had beautiful people come into my life that supported me in writing the book. My sister was one of those people, and my mom, and Liz Wright, who's a publisher, if you're looking for a publisher.
Okay.
She was able to help me do all the formatting and creating it into a book. But the adversary was definitely strong as I was writing my book. So I tell very personal stories, and with that includes my family. So it was really hard when my stepmom found out about some of the stories I was writing, because she was afraid that it would portray my dad in a certain light, right?
Okay.
So I was very mindful of the stories I was writing, though, too, because the thing is people are not their stories, right?
Oh, that's really powerful.
Yes. So I was like, yes, my dad had a part of those limiting beliefs, but he also had a part of my positive beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
And I portrayed that in my book too. I said, listen, don't judge people based off of the chapter in their life, because, and I've talked about this too, like scripturally, like look at some of the most strongest people in the scriptures. They were some of the most wicked people who've had these coming to Jesus moments, and now they are the most powerful people for good.
Wow.
But yeah, so that was really hard to share some of these stories, even with my mom, because I had shared, she left when we were little. But me and my mom are like best friends. We were so close. Like, she's my confidant. Like, even on my way here, I was so excited, and I was just telling her, that I was going to be speaking with Stephanie about my book. And so I don't judge people because they're going through something, because for me, I'm just seeing that is a journey, a step that they need to take in becoming.
Yeah.
But it finally came, and I've already had powerful experiences from people who had maybe not the same things happen, but very similar things happen. And they were able to, for me, it gives people permission to heal. Mm-hmm. And it gives permission to people, for people to say, hey, I've been through this, but it doesn't have to define me.
Yeah.
So.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that you brought up, don't judge us by the chapters of our life that we're in right
Mm-hmm.
now. I think for me, that's a powerful reminder as well for my own children, being a mother and
Mm-hmm.
seeing the choices that are being presented to my children, that I get to open my heart and realize, okay, this is a chapter of your life, and this is how I'm seeing it. This is how I'm reading it.
Right.
At this moment, I need
Mm-hmm.
to allow you to have these experiences.
Yeah.
Do you feel like your family allowed you to have these experiences, and that's how you came to a place of eventually healing?
Mm-hmm.
You said that you never let go of God.
I never did let go of God. He was always my strength. My dad passed away just a year ago. So, and we never really did get to talk. Sorry. Like I said, he had a really hard childhood. So as a father, he clung to me and his children because he desperately needed us to fill his cup, right? He was outside things to fill him. So it was really hard for him to see his daughter, because I know he loved me, but it was really hard for him to see his daughter going through such hard things when he did everything he could to raise us right. Like, we were raised in a really good Christian church. We should have had all the tools necessary to overcome that. So I think for my dad, it was really hard for him. So was it easy for him to let me live my life and go through those trials? Absolutely not. But at the same time, I feel like my life was preserved because my dad and my mom were praying for me. Sorry. Every night they were praying for me. They knew something wasn't right because I was a very secretive person. I didn't want my sins to fall upon my family. So my drinking, my partying, nobody knew. It was, what they saw was this perfect little innocent person when I would show up to Sunday dinners, so they didn't know. But parents have intuition for their children, and they know when something isn't right. So they did. They prayed for me every night, and I know I was protected because of that. So to kind of answer your question, I think that it's hard for parents to allow their children to have those experiences because we love our children. Your children almost become your life and your why. And when you see them struggle, you want to save them from that. So I can only imagine too. And and it's been such a blessing for me because I've gone through all those things, and now I'm on the other side of it, and I've become a better person because of it. So I can only imagine a loving Heavenly Father, right, seeing us, and he's just like, what are you doing? But the grace you have to have for your children to fall, you have to have so much love and compassion. And I would just say, if anything, what helped me was my dad didn't give me the love or he didn't know how to say what I was doing was okay, because it wasn't. So that was hard. And we weren't able to have that conversation before he passed away, or for him to even read my book, because I was honestly afraid for him to read it and feel bad or shame about himself, even though he was such a powerful person in my life too. Taught me work ethic and how to be a good person and service. And but I had a mother who was very loving because she experienced very similar lifestyle with low self-esteem. So she was my confidant. She never judged me or held things over me. So I was able to come to her. So I guess it just depends on what type of relationship do you want with your children. Do you want to be able to come to them where they're at and be... When you're struggling, you don't need someone to rub it in your face even more. Do you know what I mean? You just need someone to say that you're sorry that they're going through that, or not even sorry, but just having empathy for their pain, and allowing them to express how they're feeling. And eventually, hopefully, that child will figure it out. I was able to figure it out. And to know that there is a plan for us, and we can't mess that up. Like, you can't mess up your plan, no matter what. And if that means that your plan is that you die and you leave this earth, like, we're just going to heaven. It's okay. But yeah.
That's interesting. That was so beautiful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for sharing that. I would like to dive into some of the tools that you learn and could share with my audience on how to move through those limiting childhood beliefs.
Right. So I think we've touched on it a little bit, but again, if you're struggling right now, you might need to find a mentor. So look out and see or even ask God, like, who is my next mentor who can help me through this? If it's something really hard. But again, just going into a quiet place, writing the things out that aren't showing up in your life the way you want to. Those are usually cycles, repetitive cycles. So I talked about how I had a baby and I thought that cycle was broken, right? But the cycle just keeps showing up because those cycles are just lessons you need to learn. Mm-hmm. So if something's showing up in your life that you don't like, you need to ask yourself, what is the lesson I'm not learning? Okay.
That's a powerful question right there.
Yes.
What is the lesson that I'm not learning?
Right. Because it will keep showing up over and over. A lot of times women will get in these really bad relationships, right? Or they attract a certain type of person. And it's like, hey, what's the lesson I need to learn to now attract a better person? Or with money, what is it? What's the lesson I'm needing to learn? Am I not learning finances? I'm not learning budgeting. With inner child wounds, a lot of times that does stem from low self-worth, no self-esteem. You need to see what are the outside things that you're using to fill your cup right now.
Okay.
So what are you doing that's giving you your worth and value? And if it's clothes, if it's makeup, if it's drugs, if it's food, you have
Action figures.
Well, there are things that can be bonuses, right? Because I love hair and makeup. I love doing my nails. I didn't have time to get them done before, and I was like stressing out. But I'm like, it's okay. Like, those are bonus things.
Yeah.
So you just have to realize that it's okay to love hair and makeup.
Okay.
It's okay to want to express yourself and find joy in things outside of yourself, but that can't be your main reason. That can't be what fills your cup completely. Okay. So when you figure out what those things are, write them down and then ask yourself, is this something emotional, physical, spiritual? Like, what is the connection to this that I need to move forward through?
Okay.
Wow. When you're first starting out, it's going to be very detailed experiences usually. So, and it could be so small. It could be something you watched on TV that imprinted on you. It could be just a conversation you overheard. So yeah, just listening, writing it down, and then how to move forward with that. There's a lot of different things you can do. For me, I chose to bring my mother into that experience when I was 12, and she told me what was true about that experience and what wasn't.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. So that's one way you can do it. Another way you can do it is you can imagine that experience or image is like a color, and you can have it release out of your body, that color, and you can send it up to God to like make it pure hold. I mean, there's so many things learning and healing is so, what's the word? Childlike. So you have to be able to learn how to imagine again and be connected again, because a lot of those things will help you in releasing things too.
That is so interesting.
But,
you have to awaken
You have to awaken the imagination of the inner child to go back and release those things. But again, a lot of therapies that I think are really powerful is EMDR. And that's an eye movement that they do with, and make sure you do it with a certified therapist.
Okay.
Because again, they could actually unlock something that your body wasn't ready to release yet. So that's why I like going within and figuring out what's the next layer I need to release. Because if you go too deep too soon, you could have like a healing crisis where it's just too much at once. So that's why I like asking myself, what's the next thing I have to learn? What's the next thing I can heal from? And then just go on from there. I hope that makes sense, that someone can go home and do this with themselves.
Yeah.
But
you went into some of the questions, and I don't know if you brought this up or not, but what about generational healing?
Yes, and that's the thing. Yes. Okay, so generational healing is a true thing, because people don't realize that you can actually get generational baggage from parents from thousands of years ago. And they've proven it through mice, right? They would scare mice or starve the mice, and then their babies would be more aggressive towards food. Or if they smelt a certain scent, they would be fearful of it. So that's proof that through your DNA, you can get things passed on.
Wow.
So how do you heal from generational things? For me, it's using muscle testing and then asking those questions.
Okay.
I feel like muscle testing is something that everyone should learn how to do, truly. I think
Really?
I told you that before. But because it's the quickest way you can tap into your subconscious, which will get you those answers. So people don't realize, so 85% of our automated, so we're on pilot. All the decisions we make are on autopilot based off of those belief systems that you might not even know you have.
Okay.
And only 15% is actually like cognitive responses of being aware and taking action.
So autopilot, like I get up, I go to the bathroom,
Brush your teeth.
brush my teeth.
Maybe you see something, you automatically make a decision based off of what you saw, like that's good or bad because of your belief system. So for me,
Okay.
autopilot, get up, do my hair, do my makeup, show up a certain way. If I didn't, then I was in distress. Or sometimes when you're in a car driving and you don't know how you got home, your body just goes on autopilot. So
Okay.
85% of the time we're on autopilot.
Wow.
But we need to learn to change our autopilot to what we want it. How we want the car to drive, how we want the car to show up. And so taking responsibility for yourself and paying attention, like those cycles are just going to keep showing up because we're on autopilot. So we keep making the same choices, we keep doing the same things, and we keep getting the same results.
It's kind of a habit, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
Interesting. So the subconscious takes over unless we have the ability to tap into it.
Well, if we want to figure out why something's not working, we need to tap into our subconscious and ask, where is this coming from? So for me, what I do in my practice is I'll ask, is this emotional? So is this an emotional trauma that's trapped in my body somewhere? So that's another big thing, is your body is, how can your body speak to you? And it's often through pain, right? We don't pay attention till pain shows up. And
Okay.
that's your body saying, hey, pay attention, there's a problem here.
Yeah.
I think it's called the 7 languages of the body, but oftentimes we'll have an emotional attachment in our body, and that will manifest as a swollen ankle or a headache or whatever that is, and you can see is that something emotional.
Yeah.
I don't know all your audience, but so I'm really on the spiritual realm of things too. So in the scriptures, when it says like fiery darts of the adversary, like that's a true thing. So that could be something from the other side that's trying to cause you harm or pain. So when I muscle test, I'll ask, is this a fiery dart of the adversary? Or is this an unclean spirit? Or is this demonic? Or, again, is this just an emotional pain that's from something that happened in my childhood? Or is it physical? Like you actually fell and hurt your elbow, right?
Yeah.
So that could just be like a physical pain that just needs some attention.
Okay.
But then with muscle testing, you can ask, do I need something specific like a vitamin or a mineral or to help in the healing process?
Okay.
So for me, it's like the Siri for our body is muscle testing. So you can ask Siri anything and she'll tell you, because you're just tapping into your spirit really.
Okay.
And your spirit always knows the answers. But
So you do that through muscle testing.
yes. And there's several different ways. So for me, I like do the hand and arm test where you put your arms together. There's like the pendulum where people use a necklace and they swing it. So if it's a circle, it's a no. If it's up and down, yes, or vice versa. They do the sway test where if you sway back, it's a yes, or if you sway forward, it's a no. Sometimes that's reverse.
I know for me, my experience has been resistance, muscle resistance.
Yes, so a lot of chiropractors will do that. So they'll
Yeah.
do the muscle resistance. And that's all it is. It's just energetically, a no is a weaker response, whereas a yes is a positive response. And again, that's for me, how I explain it is just your spirit using your body to give you answers.
Okay.
And
Does that
that's
take
helped me
time to
tremendously.
It
takes time to
I would
trust
say?
yourself.
Yeah.
And it takes time to trust the process, because a lot of the healing modalities I use might be considered woo-woo or out there. I know there's a really bad feeling when people say Reiki or energy work. And I totally get that, because I have worked with practitioners who get their source of power or healing through Satan. And then there's people who get their power through God. So I think it's very important to trust your body too. If something doesn't feel right, it's not right.
Yeah.
If someone's telling you something and it doesn't feel right, like listen to that.
Your gut instinct.
Yes, we have instincts. We have that intuition. And I
Yeah.
think people don't know how to listen to their intuition.
Okay.
We don't know how to listen to our body. Yeah, YouTube is great for learning how to muscle test. There's several different modalities. The only warning I would give is really make sure you're clearing your space, saying a prayer before you do it, that you will be given, if it's a yes, it's really yes from God. And if it's a no, it's really a no, because we do have outside influences that will try to influence us the wrong way or the wrong direction. And that's where I think energy work can really create enablers and create goddesses and priests who think they have all these powers. And in order for me to heal, I have to see so-and-so who's going to tell me what I need. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I think you have to be really careful. That's why I like to learn it for myself, because I get my own answers now. Even with people, like if I come in contact with a new person, I can ask, is this person going to be beneficial in my life? Are we going to be able to, is this going to be a good friendship? And if you get a no, then maybe you just, that's another thing I could talk about too. Who's in your inner circle that it's time to let go of for your healing?
Yeah.
You're born into family. That doesn't mean you have to stay with your family. There can be lots of toxic family members that you might have to step away from, and that's okay. And setting those boundaries. And boundaries don't have to be actually set in person. They can be done just for yourself. Like I knew with my dad, there were certain conversations I knew we just couldn't get into. Politics is one of them. Not politics, but for some people, politics is a big one, right? So you just know, hey, if that conversation comes up, you can politely remove yourself. But boundaries, I talk about boundaries in my book. That's a really powerful tool that people need to start learning how to say no when things don't serve them to their highest and greatest potential.
Yeah. I learned a long time ago that saying no can actually be a gift as well.
It is. It's a huge gift. And I feel like in a lot of religious communities, when you say no, you're not serving, right? So we're supposed to serve our fellow man. How can you be in service if you're serving from an empty cup? If you have nothing to give, but you keep giving. So we're not supposed to run faster than we're meant to.
Yeah.
So learning to say no is also, it's a thing of integrity. So if you say yes to something and you don't show up, that you lose your integrity, even though you had the intention of doing it. And I had to learn too for myself, just take 1 minute. If somebody asks you to do something, take 1 minute before you respond. And if it's on a phone call, just be like, oh, can I call you? Let me make sure that's something I can do and I can call you right back. Because that gives you time to evaluate. There's no lie. Because I'd much rather have someone say, Heather, I can't show up because of XYZ, instead of Heather, I'll show up, and they don't.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's the same for yourself too. Like having integrity with the choices you're making. Like don't commit to something if you know that's too big of something you could do. Like give yourself small little things that you know with good conscience you will be able to fulfill for yourself. But that's a big one.
Well, Heather, these have been some beautiful, powerful tools that you've shared with us. And thank you for sharing your vulnerable stories of learning. And I appreciate those examples that you have taken that experience and allowed yourself to share that message to empower others. Yes. I believe what you have gone through has opened up your heart immensely, that you were very intuitive and probably have more empathy
absolutely
than you would have had otherwise. And I appreciate you willing to go down that journey.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be able to just speak with you about it, and hopefully it will help other people to share their stories too, if they feel so inclined to do.
And how can we find your book?
So my book is on Amazon. It's also, you can get the Kindle version too on Amazon. But
okay.
You can find me on Facebook too. You can private message me if you want like a signed copy, and I can send it to people too. But yeah.
I have my signed copy.
Yes.
And I highly recommend that when you receive this book that you take the time with a pen and notebook. Make sure to take notes, because I believe, at least in my opinion, it has opened up some chapters of my life that have been dormant for a long, long time. I was able to understand where you were going through in your own chapters and recognize, oh, okay, I remember a similar situation where a similar belief happened in my life. And so I'm excited to follow through in the end of that and find out what those tools are and being able to heal that.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your practice.
So I'm a transformational coach. So I love working I do group coaching with women. So if anyone feels so inclined, so maybe I'm the teacher that showed up that they're ready for. You can find me on Facebook. So it's Today She Is, Transformational Coaching for Women. It's a private Facebook group that they can join right away. Every Wednesday I get on and I do a live video. I talk really deeply about some of the modalities we were talking about today. And then I have a podcast, Today She Is, and you can find that on Anchor or Apple, wherever that's available, you can find that. So if people want to follow me there, I also have a website, todaysheyis.com, which will give the link to the book, the podcast, and the private Facebook group. So they can work with me one-on-one or group coaching, or they can just start with the book and see if we would be a good fit. Because really, if you read the book, you'll know if you love me or hate me. So
I don't think hate is in there. But I will say that I believe that those who've felt so inclined, you've touched your heart and you feel a drive to be able to reach out to Heather. These are some locations that you can, and I'm sure grateful for your friendship, and I have been able to experience some of your mentorship, and it has been very, very healing for me to be able to go back into my own stories and realize, like you said, maybe there were some things that I have believed all these times that were not applicable to my life, or that maybe there was some untruths.
Absolutely. It's powerful.
So beautiful. Thank you, Heather, for being here.
Thank you, Stephanie, so much. And thank you, everyone, for listening today.
If you've enjoyed this episode, remember to subscribe, share, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Instagram. Please comment because I would love to hear about what you think and what you want to see in the future. I'm no therapist, but I am your host, Stephanie Goodman.